Hi guys, welcome back. In today's video we're going to look at the print module in Lightroom. Um, we will be examining how to make contact sheets, custom picture packages, different ways you can lay out your images into a single print or a series of prints. So let me give you a quick overview of what's here. So we have, similar to our other modules, we've got a preview screen that lets us see in our template browser some of these different templates here that we have available. We can make custom layouts too, but these are pretty handy. A lot of really common things that are popular for a reason. We have the actual working area, and we've got it's the style. Is it going to be a single image or perhaps a contact sheet? Custom package. We have some settings. It lets us know whether or not it's going to zoom the images to fill it. Is it going to rotate them? Are we going to have a border around the images? If so, how big of a border? Then we have the actual layout here. We can choose a template from the template browser there, and then we can further fine-tune those. We can change the size of the cells. Things like that. We also have an option for different kinds of guides. So maybe we want to have the page bleed, margins, things like that. You can print those and have them visible or leave them off. We could change the background color. So you could make it black if you wanted to. We can include or not an identity plate. We have the ability to edit it here. I'll show you that a bit later. We have options for the colors of the font, the opacity. We can change the size and scale of it. We can include a watermark on each photo. There's a template I've created already. I'll show you more about that later. We can include the file name on each photo. We have some other options for actual information from the images that we'd like to include. We could include some of this metadata stuff here. That's an option. We can change the font size of that as well. And lastly, we have some of our printer settings. You'll notice we also can take care of some of the printer settings here, as well as page setup. This would be choosing the specific printer we're going to print on, the paper size, orientation, things like that. But for now we want to concentrate on the layout here. Most of you, if you're not printing at home, instead of sending this directly to a printer in here where it says print to, you'll actually click here and print to JPEG. That saves this as a JPEG, which you would then take to whatever print services that you use, whether it's Costco or Photolab, someplace like that. Let's go back to the layout here. So I've got, below our template browser, I've got some collections. So I can go through my different collections here and make contact sheets or print layouts for any of these things here. So it's nice to have them here in this module without having to jump back and forth to the library. Let's go back here. So as I mentioned, we can change the margin size here. We can change the number of rows or columns. So now once we've done this, we're really not sticking with this template that we chose over here earlier. I believe it was the 4-wide template. So once we start changing this, obviously we don't have 4 rows or 4 columns here, but you can sort of freehand or custom layout your images however you feel is necessary. We can change the spacing between them, so you've got a little bit more border between. That could be handy if you're going to trim these. If you're looking for the maximum amount of image area possible, and you're not too worried about if your trim isn't precise and you cut into one of these, then you don't need space between them. So in order to lay these out to our assignment specifications, if you recall, the minimum was 12 images per page. I chose that just because going into your final project, you should have much more than just 36 images to choose from for your final. Ideally, whatever your subject matter is that you want to include in your portfolio, hopefully by this time you have significantly more than 36 images. So let's say you've got a few hundred. I'd like to be able to help people save money on printing costs. So if you have at least 12 per page or more, you'll save yourself a little bit of money if you have a lot of images. It can be nice sometimes to have much bigger sizes for the images on your contact sheets. That way, if you want to cut these up later, you kind of have larger reference prints to work with. But for our assignment, it was at least 12 and at least 3 pages worth. So you'd have 36 at the very minimum. I definitely advise you to dig through your archives, and hopefully you've got more than that. So this would be the basic layout. You don't have to have the identity plate on it, although you can if you'd like. There's certainly room for it. If we were going to lay this out in the manner of a traditional 35mm contact sheet, you would have 36 images in it. So let's go to another collection where I have a lot more. Let's say this collection I've got about 30, so it's almost 36. To do that, you could choose 6 by 6 for your rows and columns. If I just had one more here, that would get us pretty close. I could also do 5 by 7. That's 35 frames. That's close. But this is where you would lay out the basics. You're going to choose the number of rows and columns, how much space you have between them. You're going to choose photo info, so you know what file number or the file name of the images that you'd like. You can put a watermark on each image. You may or may not be able to see those. This is pretty small. You can see as I toggle that on and off, you can see it sort of flashes, puts it really discreetly down there in the corner. If these were bigger single image prints, it'd be a lot easier to see. So that's the really quick and dirty basics of laying out a contact sheet. As I said, once you have the layout to your liking, the next step would be print it to a JPEG. For most of you, if your printer is already installed, then we would need to set this up. But so you would print to JPEG. The default resolution when you come to this panel here is 300 pixels per inch, and most of the time you can just leave that there because that's the max resolution for most printers. Print sharpening, it also defaults to low sharpening and glossy media. If you're printing at a place like Costco, you usually don't have a true matte option. This matte they're referring to is actually a smooth paper that doesn't really have a shine on it. A lot of labs, when they say matte, what they really mean is more of a luster, kind of a semi-gloss finish. But you would still choose glossy for that here for the media type. Print sharpening, when you're printing on glossy paper, you don't really need any extra sharpening. If we had chosen matte, let's say we were printing on a fine art watercolor type paper that's really has quite a bit of texture to it, you would want high sharpening because you can tend to lose some resolution in the texture of the paper. But let's set this up as though we were sending it off to Costco, which is what a lot of people do. Obviously you want 100% quality here. It's really not that difficult. This isn't going to be a huge file, so there's really not any need to bring this down. You may find some occasion where you need to, but most of the time you want the max quality possible. If we had some custom dimensions for our paper, let's say we had our own printer, or it was just a printer that was capable of some odd sizes, we could specify that here, but in page setup here I'd already chosen letter size, so I don't need to worry about that. Lastly, color management. This, as I said, is the subject that really gets pretty technical and is a whole class unto itself. But if you were printing at home, you would want to choose a profile that matches the paper you're printing on with the printer that you're using. So I have an Epson 3800, so I would need to go and download a profile from the paper manufacturer's website. So let's say it was Canson, which is these profiles. These are for these are Costco profiles. I could use these if I was sending it there. If I'm printing at home on this Moab paper, you want to match up the paper to the printer with a profile from either the manufacturer, or if you've got the tools to do it, you can make a custom profile. So you select the, let's just pick one just to kind of at least get close. Rendering intent, this is telling it what to do with colors that are out of the gamut of the paper. So the paper, each particular paper has a different size color gamut. It has a number of colors that it can reproduce, and then you may have some images where they fall outside of that gamut of what it can reproduce. So this tells it what to do with the colors that fall outside of that gamut. It defaults to relative, and for now we'll just say leave it there. It's, as I said, can be a pretty technical explanation just to explain what the difference is between these two. Lastly, if you'd printed at a particular lab before and you knew that your prints always came out a little bit darker, you could make that adjustment here, and it's not something you have to go back and do to each individual image in the develop module. You can do it to your whole print here, which is kind of a nice option. Same with contrast. And then once I have this set up, when I click print to file, because I've selected print it to a JPEG, I can tell it where to put this image. We can save this to whatever location we need. If I had selected printer, then this would go to whatever printer I have installed. We would from there go through all the print dialog boxes that your particular printer has. Might be in here having to match up some of these media type things, but again, that's subject matter for another class on color management and digital printing. For most of you, it's going to be simply setting this up with the proper resolution and sharpening settings, the profile if you have access to it, and then print it to your JPEG. So that's kind of the quick version of how to lay out a contact sheet. In another video, I'll show you some of these other options for picture package and custom package. Until then, if you've got any questions, feel free to email me or post it in one of the forums. See you next time.